Welcome to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining us. I have Brendan Dunn, CEO of Holdun Family Office with me, coming to us from the Bahamas. Brendan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
I'm glad you're here. All right, give us some background on your fund, your family office, and you, and then let's talk about the different things we're going to talk about, wealth management, fintech investments, the things that you and your family office are interested in.
Sure. Appreciate the time. I'll make it quick, give a little background on our company. So we are a fifth generation family office that was started by my great-great-grandfather, Sir Herbert Holt. He came over from Ireland to Canada and was arguably one of the most successful businessmen in Canadian history. He controlled over 300 companies around the world. Most notably for non-Canadians, longest serving president and chairman of the Royal Bank of Canada, CP Rail, largest rail company in Canada, and Montreal Light Heat and Power, which is one of the largest energy producers in North and South America. That was nationalized and now operates under Quebec Hydro. Since then, we are a single family office for 4 generations. My grandfather ran it, my dad ran it. My dad's still involved as the chairman, and 15 years ago we expanded into a multifamily office. So we manage our family's assets. We're still the largest client, alongside other high net worth individuals, families, or charitable organizations.
Well said. Tell me, the type of investments your company is making and the wealth management. Let's talk about those two. Let's start with the wealth management, what you're doing on that front, and the kind of investments that your family office is focused on.
Sure. So we build segregated, on the wealth management alone, we build segregated portfolios for each of our clients, meaning we can customize their investment exposure or allocations on their unique needs. So we're not a fund manager. So one client's portfolio could be completely different than another's or have similarities. So our job is to build the perfect portfolio that makes sense for each individual client, given their risk tolerance, their time horizon, and any unique factors that they might have individually. But overall, obviously as a portfolio manager, we look to create diversification and lower volatility. The best way to do that is to invest across multiple asset classes. Equities and bonds are your standard core portfolio, as they provide the liquidity and to enable to get people in and out if they need asset cash quickly. And you could build around that with alternative investments, private equity, venture capital, real estate, commodities, futures, all of that, depending on what a client needs. But our job is to work with the client before we make any investments to see what they're looking to do, what they're trying to achieve for themselves. And then we work together to build a portfolio which includes asset allocation that is perfectly or is close to perfect fitted to themselves.
Okay, that's good. And fintech investments, I understand you've got an interest there.
Yes. So as a family office, our wealth was generated from my great-great-grandfather in the finance space. So our family has a brand. Our operating business is our family office, is our wealth management. So we have done, fintech investments per se. So we came up with the idea of creating our own fintech accelerator. So rather than do 1 or 2, club deals or direct fintech investments on an annual basis, we came up with the concept of creating our own fintech accelerator, which has a lot of benefits to it. I can go into detail of the accelerator yourself if you wish.
Yeah, I'd like to know what kind of deal flow you have there. Underneath that and the cycle process.
Yeah, so why we created an accelerator is a couple reasons. One, you get a lot more deal flow because under accelerator, we do a global search. So we got over 400 applications to the fintech accelerator, which is obviously a lot more than you would just see if you're making one-off investments, whether it's through club deals or through investment banks that send you the deals. So we were able to screen over 400 fintech investments from around the world. Secondly, as an accelerator, you're able to have more formal relationships with our network, meaning VC funds and financial institutions. If I had a deal that I was working on, I could call up my contacts at the banks and ask them if they wanted to co-invest. But it's really a one-off relationship, which doesn't work that well, even if you're talking to the CEO of a bank. They have their mandates, they have their procedures, and they have the investments they're looking at. Same with venture capital funds that we may be investors in or we may have partnerships with. They're busy, on their own programs. But if you have an accelerator, both of those entities, venture capital funds and financial institutions, want to be attached to that, so you can have a more formal relationship. So we have over 100 advisors for our FinTech Accelerator made up of venture capitalists, meaning venture capital funds across the world, and financial institutions, mainly in Canada and the US, who are actively involved in screening those 400 applications. So when we had those 400 applications, when we closed the window for applicants, which I think was July 31st, all the VC funds that are partnered with us were involved in taking those 400 applications and narrowing it down to about 150 applications. Those 150 applications were then each had an individual 30-minute call with myself or our other founding partner in the accelerator and one venture capital partner. So there's two people in every call, a venture capitalist and a partner of the Holt Accelerator. And we used the feedback from those calls to narrow down to the top 30 teams. The top 30 teams were then invited to what's called a selection day, which was a live event in Montreal where the accelerator is based. And on that day, we had 100 other people, our VC funds and our financial institutions, as well as angel investors and investors itself in the accelerator were there, and they had 15-minute interviews, live interviews, with each of the top 30 teams. We took that feedback from all 100 people to select the top 10 and make it in the program. So that type of screening cannot be done if you're doing a one-off deal. No. Obviously, we're comfortable investing in fintech, we know it, but the more eyes, the better. So one of the reasons we created the accelerator is we're going to have a lot more people looking at every single deal before we get attached to it. Also, by having the financial institutions like the banks and the venture capital firms involved and getting their feedback, you kind of know who's going to be the follow-on investor. You know if these venture capital funds are invested in it or interested in it, or the financial institutions think it's a fit for the problems that they're experiencing currently within their bank. So as an accelerator, our job is to get those companies ready for their next funding round or their next institutional client. So if we already know in advance who's interested in them, we can pretty much funnel them or filter them and focus them on what they need to do to sign those contracts. So it kind of, then taking a step back and looking at why we did it, it de-risks our venture capital investments because we have 100 people screening these deals alongside ourselves before we actually invest in them. So that's why we created it. And the other reason is obviously to give back to the community and foster a greater talent pool in Montreal. Montreal is one of the top AI hubs in the world now. So it made sense to have it in Montreal, which is where our family originally is from, and benefit that ecosystem and help develop it and bring great talent from around the world. So we have a company from Europe coming. We have a couple companies from South America and about 4 companies from the States coming. The rest majority are actually Canadian fintech companies. But it's a great way for us to get the top 10 fintech companies from around the world all coming to Montreal and working in our family office's office space together, and obviously having the feedback from all of our partners in advance, knowing which ones should be successful going forwards.
What are you doing on the generational wealth planning side?
It depends. There's a difference between what we're doing for our family or what we're doing for clients. Some clients do it externally, some would use us. Obviously, as being our own family office, we've structured our generational wealth planning over the last 3 or 4 generations. We can use that as a template or an example for clients. Each family is different, but the goal is obviously, if you're going to work with the family office, they have a long-term outlook, which is what we do, and our job is to structure your investments in terms of the generational transfer of wealth. So that could be utilizing trust structures, making sure your investments are in the right corporations or tax structures to minimize taxes, and put together family governance or family planning protocols to make sure that the family itself is operating properly and following some guidelines. But every family will be different. Some families don't want the children to know. Some families want the children to know but not be involved. Some people want the children to be actively involved and kind of succeed them. But you can't. There's no one correct structure. It depends on the family itself. So our job is to work with the family to understand what they're trying to achieve and how they want to do that. And it's not for us to say what's right or wrong. As I said, every family is different, and then help them structure that and put something in place that allows them to operate properly.
Good. All right, Brendan, thanks for being a guest on this show. I would really look forward to seeing some of the people that make it to the top of your list on our show so that we can interview the best of the best coming out of your family office, the Holdun Family Office.
Oh, we'd love to do that. I mean, I'm happy to send you some information. We have some The top 10 teams the marketing stuff is being finalized this week. Happy to share that with you, and then keep you in the loop and make sure you're aware of the ones that succeed.
I would. All right, you've been watching CEO Michael Yorba hosting CEO Money, and Brendan Dunn's been our guest, coming to us from the Bahamas for the Holdun Family Office. Thanks for joining. Don't forget, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.